My name is Anissa Bouziane. I'm the author of the English language novel Dune Song, and I'd like to thank Aphorisme Journal Philosophique for inviting me to continue our conversation begun in January of 2020 around the theme and the idea, the concept of travel. So today I would like to speak to you about a poem that I've long loved entitled Exile by the American poet Edna St. Vincent Millay. Some of you might not be familiar with her work. Edna St. Vincent Millay was a woman writer from the early 20th century, and in her day and age, the jazz age, she was amongst the most well-known of poets. She even received the Pulitzer Prize in 1923. But she has since then been forgotten by many. And I believe that Ivan Bolin was right when, in trying to revive the memory of Edna St. Vincent Millay, Bolin said that Millay rode the razor's edge of modernity, and in some ways was modern in her attitude, the way she lived her life, but more traditional in her form. Namely, she used the sonnet and meter and rhyme. And as a result, once the clarion call of modernist poetry led by Pound and others rang out, Edna seemed less as one of the great modernists, but in many ways she is, because she bore witness to her life, which as a woman was led with incredible daring, where she dared to talk about women's passions and women's dreams in a way that broke a lot of the expected attitudes about how women should lead their lives. But this is not about Edna as much as it is about one poem, Exile, and how exile speaks to us of travel and of women's travel in a moment where women move out of traditional spaces, often rural or domestic spaces, out towards the great metropolises. And in Edna St. Vincent Millay's case, she moved from the coast of Maine to New York City. And that was a great expansive freedom in that movement out and away from rural Maine. And yet, once she arrives in the city and becomes a celebrated poet, there is something that she longs for. And she longs for the relationship with the sea and a relationship with nature. And the poem might be read as nostalgic, except it is titled Exile. And by that title alone, she lets us know that there is no return. And therefore, she has discovered something of what was lost in her travel, but then she must live with the eternal sorrow of knowing she cannot get it back. And what's interesting is that, of course, that travel leads to phenomenal self-awareness and self-understanding of how much of the freedom of the sea was at the heart of who she is, but that she can only carry that in her heart and cannot go back to it. And therefore, travel leads to self-understanding, but it also leads to an exile that can be a self-exile. So with that, I'd like to read a few stanzas from Exile for you, and then maybe talk about what it means to me specifically, and then hopefully we'll let you go and discover the full poem on your own. Exiled by Edna St. Vincent Millay. Searching my heart for its true sorrow, this is the thing I find to be, that I am weary of words and people, sick of the city, wanting the sea, wanting the sticky, salty sweetness of the strong wind and the shattered spray, wanting the loud sound and the soft sound of the big surf that breaks all day. Always before about my dooryard, marking the reach of the winter sea, rooted in sand and dragging driftwood, straggled the purple wild sweet pea. Always I climbed the wave at morning, shook the sand from my shoes at night. Now that I am caught beneath great buildings, stricken with noise, confused with light. The poem goes on, but the last stanza is the following. I should be happy, that I am happy, never at all, since I came here. I am too long away from water. I have a need of water near. So as you see, there is this longing, and in the longing there is deep sorrow. Sorrow that this thing that once inhabited her is so far from her. And the last stanza teaches us in many ways that there is no going back to the innocence of who she was growing up on the coast of Maine, that there is a part of her that will carry it always, but that the metropolis strickens her with its light and its massive buildings and its constant noise. And so there is a price, it seems to be, that Millay says to us for the travel that was hers, this emancipatory travel, this necessary travel. And the price is the understanding that a part of herself was left behind in nature, but that she cannot go back to it, but that she has gained a greater sense of understanding. In some ways, she cannot go back to Acadia. She cannot re-enter her Eden. And yet she reflects on it through her poetry that constantly connects her to that nature, which is deep inside of her. I myself discovered this when on the coast of New England, I too was looking for a sense of belonging and realized that Edna St. Vincent Millay gave me a vocabulary for that longing. It was an exile. It was a self-exile. I carry that with me, and I carry with it the shards of the essence of who I am and who I left behind.